So we have used the learning contract as an individual work. But do you think it can be used in group, for groups, an instrument for working in groups?
Yeah, and I'll answer that with one word, and then I'll explain. I'll say yes, it can be used in groups. Oh, and in this, what I mean is that that a group of people can develop a learning contract and agree upon it, and they work as a group or as a team toward that particular goal. I want to give you two illustrations, and then I want to turn and ask you all maybe to get involved in this process if you're interested. In the mid-1970s, I was working in the rural area, actually 350 miles away from St. Louis, and a group of sisters from the Order of the Sisters of St. Francis came to me one day and asked me the question, do you do long-range planning? Well, I said, yeah, I do, but what do you have in mind? Well, this was a group of sisters. Their order was around 45 or 50 people total. And in the most recent 10 years prior to their coming to me, they had not had a new person come into their order. Well, that really means that as the total group aged, and then they got to the age where they died, the order ultimately would die out. They were concerned about that. And they said, can we do some long-range planning that would help us not face that ultimate crisis where we would go out of existence? Can we look toward the future? And as a consequence of that conversation, I set up an arrangement where I worked with them, the Superior General and her council, mostly, but also with the full order. I worked with them for 75 full days over a period of about 3 years. We would consult, we would talk about what they were faced with, how they needed to go about doing things and looking toward the future. And I got them involved in self-directed learning and looking toward the future, and we also made sure that we did not violate what their commitments were. When they go into an order, I think they commit themselves to poverty, to chastity, and obedience. Those three things that have to do with their going into an order. And they, over the years, had sort of developed the idea that it's only from outside that can tell us what we need to do, and we have to be obedient to that. Well, I raised with them the question about looking toward what they might do to reach out to other people that might consider coming into the order. I also asked them to become self-directed in their look toward the future. How else might we look toward the future of sustaining our order as a live order? And they, of course, would interact with the structure of their authority within their order, which meant they had to talk with the bishops. They had to get approval from the Pope, if you will, as to what they wanted to do. And we wanted to make sure that they didn't violate their commitments, those three commitments, when we were looking toward the future. Well, the upshot of it was that they ultimately made a decision as a group to recontact the group that they had left in St. Louis. 50 years prior to that, Mother Augustine Geeson, who was the head of the order, felt a call from the Lord to go out to minister in the rural area rather than in St. Louis. And so now they looked and thought about the future and said, maybe we can recontact the group that we left and see whether or not they would like to collaborate with us and form a new order, which they did. And I am happy to report today that group of sisters is alive and well today and are growing and are looking toward the future because of the process that we went through. And basically they had a group learning contract that they developed. They wanted to look at how do we survive as an order. Another illustration that I'll give you is a group that came from a major corporation in the St. Louis area a few years ago and said, we haven't had an update in education in 15 years. Can you help us? And we went through a process of getting them updated in education to look toward how they might contribute to their organization. And ultimately they took an analysis of implementing self-directed learning in their training programs and said if we did that instead of the kind of training that we had done, what kind of difference of cost of money would that spell? And they found out that thorough analysis inside the organization that if they did that over a period of 5 years, they would save as a corporation $5 million. Now that's that's kind of big and kind of large, and I'd like to maybe illustrate with you how a group learning contract might come about with your group. And what I'd like to do is divide you all into what shall we say, 4 different groups?
They are 13, so...
13. 4 different groups, 3 in each, with 1 being 4. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
All right? And you can decide how you want to divide yourselves. Well, I want 4 in 1 group and 3 in 3 groups. And I want you to address the question, what is the most important thing that you need to learn about learning contracts? I'm going to go through a process to do this, but I want each group to come up with their own answer. Now that means that in a group of 3, you have to, each one of you may have your individual idea, but I want you to come to a decision of determining what will be the one thing that you as a small group will be interested in learning about, or you think is the most important thing. Does that, is that clear? And I'll tell you what I'm going to do after that, and I'll sort of tip my hand to show you how this works, is that after you determine, your 4 groups determine what the most important thing is that you want to learn, then I will put you together 2 groups in one group and the other 2 in another group, and come and determine what's the most important thing as you merge. And then when you make that decision, then I'll put you together and come up with the one thing. But in the meantime, I want you to separate in 4 different groups and answer the question, what's the most important thing you feel like you can learn about learning contracts right now? Okay?